Hello and welcome to Race for the White House, our daily show where we get you the latest from the 2024 U.S. Presidential election. On today's show, we tell you how Trump is facing fire after backing a candidate for governor of North Carolina who has been engulfed by a massive sex and racism scandal. We also tell you how Harris and Trump have both held major rallies. Harris sat down for a town hall with Oprah Winfrey, while Donald Trump spoke at an event in support of Israel. All of this and much more, so let's get started. We begin with a scandal that's shaking up North Carolina's gubernatorial race. Republican nominee Mark Robinson, the state's lieutenant governor, is facing explosive allegations. A recent investigation by CNN has uncovered disturbing statements made by Robinson over a decade ago. These comments, allegedly made on an adult website, include references where he calls himself a black Nazi. On this website, Robinson also expressed support for reinstating slavery. These comments were made between 2008 and 2012 under the username Minnesota. CNN identified Robinson by matching biographical details and email addresses he used across various platforms. The findings reveal a troubling pattern of derogatory rhetoric, including praising Adolf Hitler and using racial slurs. In response to these allegations, Robinson has adamantly denied making these statements. He actually referred to the revelations as tabloid trash.
Well, guys, the news media is at it again. My opponent is at it again. You all have seen the half-truths and outright lies of Josh Stein on these ads over and over again. And now a story leaked by him to CNN is appearing now. Let me reassure you, the things that you will see in that story, those are not the words of Mark Robinson. You know my words, you know my character, and you know that I have been completely transparent in this race and before.
However, the mounting evidence is raising significant concerns among voters. Reports suggest that members of the Republican Party are actually increasingly worried about the potential impact of Robinson's past on the election. Anonymous sources also indicated there's growing pressure for him to step aside as a Republican candidate. The Robinson scandal also implicates Donald Trump, who once called the Lieutenant Governor Martin Luther King on steroids.
A man who's one of the hottest politicians in our country, married to an incredible woman, and respected so much in North Carolina, and anybody that sees him or knows him, they immediately say, there's a man that we want representing us, Lieutenant Governor, North Carolina, Mark Robinson.
This is not the first scandal Robinson has been hit with during this campaign. Earlier news broke that Robinson had paid for an abortion for his wife decades ago. This came after he publicly called for a complete abortion ban with no exceptions in the state. But all of this leaves a major opportunity for Kamala Harris and the Democrats. North Carolina is a crucial battleground state in the U.S. presidential election. Now, Donald Trump narrowly won the state in 2020 by beating Joe Biden. But this time around, Harris wants to win North Carolina for the Democrats. Her party has dedicated a significant amount of time campaigning to win the state. Harris is positioning herself as a candidate of integrity and wants to contrast her vision for the state with controversies surrounding Robinson. Now, at this time, it seems like Democratic nominee Josh Stein is the favorite to beat Robinson and become governor. But so far, polls also show that Trump and the Republicans are still the favorites to win North Carolina in November. The stakes are high, as North Carolina plays a significant role in the upcoming presidential election. As voters head to the polls, they may be also grappling with Robinson's past. Moving on, Vice President Kamala Harris is making headlines after she appeared alongside Oprah Winfrey at a campaign rally. The two women spoke at a talk show-style rally entitled Unite for America, which pulled together a variety of groups supporting Harris in the 2024 presidential election. Oprah Winfrey is a powerful ally of Harris, who endorsed her last month and delivered a passionate speech on her behalf at the Democratic National Convention. The evening kicked off with a star-studded opening, featuring virtual appearances from celebrities like Jennifer Lopez, Meryl Streep, and Bryan Cranston. Harris faced pressing questions from the audience regarding immigration, which has been a significant issue in this campaign. She outlined the details of a border bill that former President Donald Trump had killed in Congress, which would have addressed the impact of flows of drugs like fentanyl into the United States. Harris committed to resurrecting that bill and also signing it if she was given the chance. Mainly, the event also highlighted stories of women who have been impacted by restrictions on abortion that have been enacted over the last few years in the United States. For example, the mother and sister of Amber Thurman, a young woman whose death has been linked to the state of Georgia's abortion ban, spoke at the event. Thurman died in 2022 because she was unable to receive proper emergency medical care in her home state of Georgia after getting an abortion. Her death has caused a political firestorm, with Harris taking up the issue as part of her campaign to secure more abortion rights for women. Another key moment came when a young woman named Hadley Duvall shared her advocacy for abortion rights. Duvall was sexually assaulted by her stepfather as a young girl and became pregnant as a result. Her story went viral after she appeared in a campaign ad for Democratic Governor of Kentucky, Andy Beshear. Duvall emphasized the urgency of caring about reproductive health care, and she said that you can't wait until it's too late to care. As the evening progressed, Harris also had a viral moment when she addressed gun violence and shared her own experience as a gun owner.
I'm a gun owner. Tim Walz is a gun.
I did not know that.
If somebody breaks in my house, they're getting shot.
Yes.
She also reiterated her stance that assault-style rifles do not belong on American streets. Throughout the evening, Harris focused on a series of freedoms that she aims to preserve, ending with the freedom to just be. The rally was designed not just to rally support, but also to unify various grassroots groups that have emerged in support of her campaign. Moving on, even as Kamala Harris was holding a town hall with Oprah Winfrey, former President Donald Trump made a major speech denouncing anti-Semitism in America. Trump's speech also highlighted his support for Israel when he was president, including the fact that he recognized Jerusalem as the country's capital. He made a strong pitch calling for Jewish Americans to vote for him and pointed out that the community really hasn't voted for him in the past. Trump expressed frustration that only a small percentage of Jewish voters supported him for his campaigns for the presidency, despite what he described as his strong pro-Israel policies. He referred to the perceived hold that the Democratic Party has on Jewish Americans as a curse, and also asserted that he should be receiving 100% of votes from Jewish Americans. Trump also suggested that if he doesn't win the upcoming election, the Jewish people would have a lot to do with the loss. Trump also attacked Kamala Harris by trying to link her to anti-Semitic incidents and hate crimes, particularly on college campuses. He accused Harris of hating Israel and said that Israel would be wiped out if he doesn't win in November.
But if we don't win this election, Israel, in my opinion, within a period of 2 to 3 years will cease to exist. It's going to be wiped out. That's what's going to happen.
Trump also painted himself as the protector of Jewish Americans and claimed to be the best friend Jewish Americans have ever had in the White House. Trump finally said that any Jewish person voting for Harris should have their head examined. Now, these remarks are important for a few reasons. At one level, Trump is trying to woo the Jewish American community, which has traditionally voted strongly for the Democratic Party. Many have pointed out that Trump is actually relying on an anti-Semitic trope to win their support, rather than talk to them about domestic concerns in America. Trump has suggested that Jewish Americans should support him because he supports Israel, a foreign country. It plays into a damaging stereotype that Jewish Americans have divided loyalties, that they are in fact more loyal to Israel than they are to America. With all of this, it remains to be seen if Trump will be successful in attracting support from Jewish voters for his candidacy in November. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi is headed to America on Thursday for a 3-day visit. But in advance of the visit, Donald Trump declared that he would be meeting Modi during his time in America. Now, the Indian government has not confirmed this meeting between Modi and Trump, and Trump's declaration has led to questions about whether Modi will also meet Democratic candidate Kamala Harris. But the possibility of a Trump-Modi meeting does raise some interesting questions. Will the meeting have much of an impact on how Indian Americans vote? And will meeting candidates drag India's Prime Minister into America's domestic politics? Now, there is some background to this. In 2019, Modi held a massive rally in Houston, Texas, which was dubbed the Howdy Modi Rally. 50,000 people, mostly Indian Americans, showed up for the event. And during the rally, Modi praised Trump strongly for making America great again, and even refashioned his famous Hindi campaign slogan for Trump. In 2014, Modi was propelled to power in India on the basis of the slogan, Ab ki baar Modi Sarkar, or this time, a Modi government. At this 2019 Howdy Modi rally, he publicly declared Ab ki baar Trump Sarkar, which was perceived as an endorsement for Trump. Remember that this was just before the 2020 U.S. Presidential election, and many wondered if Modi had broken diplomatic protocol. As we head into the 2024 elections, both Trump and Harris will be keen to win support among the 4.5 million Indians who live in America. There could be a possibility that they will use a meeting with Modi, who remains popular among Indian Americans, to get that support. Could the Indian premier actually be dragged into America's election battle? There is certainly some risk of that. Joining us now is our correspondent in Washington, D.C., Rohit Sharma. Rohit, could you give us some details about Prime Minister Modi's visit to America and his upcoming meeting with Trump? What is this whole thing about?
Well, very interesting days ahead. Most world leaders will be in New York. and they're all descending down to for the United Nations General Assembly. A lot of bilateral meetings with a lot of world leaders, and one to watch out for would be how many of these leaders are meeting with President Trump and or Vice President Kamala Harris. And this is where it gets a little trickier. So Prime Minister Narendra Modi will be in town in New York. He is going to be speaking to the diaspora. He's going to be meeting with a lot of business leaders. He's going to be having a lot of bilaterals. And also the fact that President Trump has gone on record to say that President Trump is going to be meeting with Prime Minister Modi. I think it does put him in a very precarious situation, because usually you don't really talk about these meetings, and there are certain rules and protocols, and as such, this being an election year, I think this being so close to election, I think the Indian government would have wanted to keep such meeting under the wraps. But the cat is out of the hat now. So I think it does put him in a situation, because you do not want to be seen as just meeting one presidential candidate. You probably would want to meet both. And if not both, then maybe none. But we haven't seen any acknowledgement coming in from the Kamala Harris campaign that that she would be meeting the prime minister. So a difficult situation. And I think just hearing from and experienced people here, he might meet both, or he might just meet none, actually. So it's possible that he could get really busy, and he might not even have time to meet with the candidates. So it all remains to be seen. But there is definitely the speculation that he's going to be meeting with President Trump, and my gut feeling tells me that he's either going to meet both, or he's not going to meet any one of them.
Now, Rohit, there is some history to this. In 2019, Modi met Trump, and there were questions about whether Modi was getting too involved in US politics. Your view on this?
Well, it's still fresh in the memories of a lot of people. When Prime Minister Modi was here in 2019, the Howdy Modi event, and how he walked the arena hand in hand with President Trump. Obviously, the hugs, the fact that he reminded voters in India, and some people say actually in the U.S., when he said "Ab ki bar Trump Sarkar," and he was playing with the fact that his own slogan from his campaign was reworked for the Trump campaign. So some people saw it as a full-on endorsement. A lot of people said we was just stating fact that his slogan was reworked for Trump to basically excite the Indian American voters to vote for Trump. So we've seen that. I honestly do not think that there would be any such mentions, even if they were to meet. I think it would be very cordial. It would be they would meet as friends, and I think the government would refrain from making any such comments. At the same time, I think Kamala Harris's campaign would also want to meet the prime minister, given his huge following among the Indian diaspora. A lot of Indian American voters do like Prime Minister Modi and the government, and would want to see, how he interacts with both the candidates, the body language of both these candidates, if the prime minister were to meet them.
And could I also ask, do you think that the candidates themselves want to meet Prime Minister Modi to win support from the diaspora? Could he actually help change votes one way or the other, perhaps for Harris or for Trump?
Look, the vote margins are razor thin in some of these battleground states. There's a lot of Indian population, for example, in Arizona, in Pennsylvania too, to a certain extent. So I think the prime minister would be, obviously, is heard by millions across the globe, and he's in the U.S. He's directly talking to the NRIs and their contribution and all that stuff. But at the same time, somebody's going to want to be able to, draw a conclusion or read between the lines as to what the prime minister is saying, and who is he leaning towards. And as much as people may think that's not the case, or he's not making a case for one candidate versus the others versus the other. I think eventually, something's got to give. So very, very thin line. And I think a lot of Indian American voters, big fan of Prime Minister Narendra Modi, big fan of his governance, are also known to be fans of Donald Trump. So if somebody, and those independent voters, very handy ones, haven't made up their mind, and if they see Mr. Modi interact with these leaders and the way he talks at the the diaspora event, will probably help people make their mind. Indian American community, again, very influential, very powerful, very resourceful, and obviously wealthy. So wooing those voters for either candidate could actually tilt the balance for the race for the White House. So we'll have to wait and watch. But people that we've spoken to are waiting to see how these leaders interact with Prime Minister Narendra Modi.
Right. Thanks so much for that, Rohit. Now, let's move on to our next segment, Poll Watch, where we break down the latest polling numbers in the U.S. presidential election. A new poll by the New York Times finds that Kamala Harris is leading Trump by 2 points in the national polls with a 49-47% margin. The two candidates are also locked in a tough battle in swing states. Harris is ahead in states like Wisconsin with 50% of public support, while Trump is slightly behind at 48%. Harris is also 3 points ahead in the crucial state of Michigan and 1 point ahead in Pennsylvania. The two candidates are tied in Arizona, Nevada, and North Carolina, where they both enjoy 48% of public support. And Trump is ahead in the state of Georgia, with 49% of the public support as compared to Harris's 47%. And now it's time for some updates from American politics that you might have missed. In a setback for Kamala Harris, the uncommitted national movement has announced that it will not endorse her for president. The movement's leaders cited her failure to respond to requests for a meeting with Palestinian families in Michigan and for a ceasefire in Gaza. In the past, they have expressed disappointment with Harris's stance on unconditional weapons supplies to Israel as well as on human rights. After the Democratic National Convention, they criticized the DNC for not allowing a Palestinian American to speak during the 3-day proceedings. This has proven to be a persistent headache for Harris, who needs support from Arab American voters in key battleground states like Michigan. While the uncommitted movement has announced that it will also oppose Donald Trump, its advocacy for uncommitted votes could divert thousands of voters that the Harris campaign needs to win. Also, as the US election heats up, the US government could be headed towards a shutdown. With the new fiscal year starting on October 1st, lawmakers are now racing to reach a deal that could provide the US government with funding, given a new fiscal year starting on October 1st. A previous bill pairing 6 months of funding for the government with controversial election law changes was rejected in the Republican-controlled House of Representatives. If no further funding is agreed to, the federal government could be forced into a partial shutdown. A lengthy shutdown could hamper government operations. Donald Trump himself has been an obstacle in getting a deal through by demanding changes in election laws in exchange for funding the government. And finally, Vice President Kamala Harris has warned of mass deportations if Trump is elected in November. Vice President Harris is warning of potential mass deportations and massive detention camps being established if Trump is elected to office. Speaking to Hispanic leaders in Washington, she emphasized the dangers of Trump's immigration agenda. She recalled past family separations and urged the audience to consider the implication of mass deportations. She also committed to enhancing border security and providing an earned pathway to citizenship. Despite Latino voters showing support for Trump's proposals, overall sentiment in the community remains against him. But it is something the Harris campaign is keen to work on. And that's all we have for you today on Race for the White House. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you again next week.